War. War never changes.
A sentence that, although is short, it perfectly encapsulates what led to the destruction of the world, and as a result, the wasteland we see before us. And how can a world that was once so lush with life and natural beauty be as equally beautiful even after its destruction? Have you ever found yourself wandering the wasteland in Fallout and thinking to yourself, wow, how does this world, riddled with mutations and nothingness, feel so lively and beautiful? Well, I have too. Today we'll be taking a shallow dive into what makes Fallout such a beautiful world to explore. Now, admittedly, I have not played Fallout 1, 2, or Tactics, so as a part of our discussion we'll be focusing solely on the Bethesda-published Fallout games, but I do want to acknowledge that not all the credit belongs to Bethesda, because without Tim Kaine and his team, we wouldn't have Fallout in the first place. And without those original games, Bethesda wouldn't have had the foundation that guided them to make such a vast and wonderful world in the 3D and FPS space. Now that I have all that out of the way, let's explore the beautiful wasteland. First impressions are everything, and I think presentation is a vital component when trying to get your players to take in and even admire the world you've built. I'm immediately reminded of that freeing feeling you get when you leave Vault 101 for the first time in Fallout 3. When you finally take your first steps out of the vault and your eyes adjust to the sun for the first time, it's truly an incomparable view. I've played many a game in my time and played every Fallout and Elder Scrolls post-Morrowind, so I have a good feel for how Bethesda reveals their worlds for the first time to players, and Fallout 3's grand reveal is one of my personal favorites, and that's for a few reasons. Fallout 3's opening is structured in a very similar way to Oblivion, where you start by being stuck in an underground structure while you are taught the basics of the game and get your bearings. That in itself is important because it removes the distraction of having to learn gameplay mechanics at the same time as being presented with a rather overwhelming and vast open world. Anyway, after a short tutorial, you are freed from the tunnels, or in Fallout's case, the vault, and have free reign of the world. A complete and open atmosphere right in front of you where you can go anywhere you want to go. However, I find myself taking only a few steps until I'm greeted by the sign that says Scenic Overlook. It's almost as if the game wants you to stop and take it all in before you inevitably get lost in the world. I think at this point it's rather obvious that the beauty of the wasteland is not beauty in a traditional sense, but rather how the wasteland is crafted that in itself tells a sad and incredible story. Fallout 4 and New Vegas' introductions both present the wasteland in very unique ways. However, New Vegas is probably my preferred of these two. The problem I have with Fallout 4's introduction to the wasteland is that although I got to finally be hands-on with what the world was like prior to the bombs fell, when I finally got to take my first steps in the wasteland, I was a bit blinded by the heartbreaking story I had just witnessed minutes before. It made me a bit tunnel vision in a way that the previous two Fallout games hadn't. Whereas in Fallout New Vegas, although the story is a bit similar to Fallout 4 in the sense that your story is inspired by revenge, in New Vegas that revenge is not something I felt needed to be rushed into. I was just happy my character was alive and well, and I knew when the time was right, Benny would pay the price. In Fallout 4, on the other hand, your revenge hits far closer to home and involves the safety of another person, so I was much more inclined to rush the story to see how everything unfolded. New Vegas and Fallout 3 stories have plenty of weight, but they allow you to kind of slow down a little bit and explore a bit more without feeling bad. At least myself, as a parent, I could not fathom not chasing the person down who stole my child, and that would be the only thing on my mind until that was done. My point is that exploration felt far more natural in New Vegas and Fallout 3, so taking in the barren wasteland was my first instinct. That being said, I've spent about 100 hours in Fallout 4 as well, and after I finally did reach the point of the main story where I felt I could pump the brakes a bit, I finally took the time to see what the game's world had to offer, and much like the previous two entries, I was smitten with the world that was laid out before me. In fact, it just may be my favorite wasteland to explore. To finally circle back to the whole point of this is that presentation matters and first impressions matter. If I hadn't started my Fallout journey with Fallout 3 all those years ago, I may not have found the wasteland to be as beautiful as it is, at least not in the same way I do now. Walking around the wasteland and seeing all the remnants of civilizations past can be equally saddening and heartwarming if looked at with the right lens. For instance, after strolling around the Commonwealth in Fallout 4 for long enough, stumbling across an abandoned building with nothing but untouched and destroyed belongings of a family that is likely not with us anymore makes me appreciate and admire the small details of what remains. When you really take your time and dissect each room, you'll start to piece together the love or memories this fictional family must have experienced within those four walls. Pictures, glassware, silverware, or even just a couch or chairs left in a room can really tell a story of what most likely happened. Picture frames that once upon a time may have contained a photo of a family that loved each other. Glassware or silverware that were used during all of their family meals. Or a couch or chairs that they all sat in to watch television together on a calm Friday evening. Memories that, in the real world, I would personally hold so dear, so seeing someone else's story right in front of me, albeit fictional, is still something that can tug at the heartstrings a bit. Knowing this house contained all that love and bonding came to a disastrous conclusion when the bombs fell right in their backyard. It's this presentation of a memory that I don't have, but can still see so vividly in my own mind, that makes the rubble truly come to life in such a vibrant and magnificent way. With so much destruction and terror that surrounds you at all times in the wasteland, it can be easy to get distracted by all that is evil or suffering. However, what I find particularly engaging and beautiful about games that take place during an apocalypse is the consistent theme that humanity and life always seem to find a way. Sure, lush and green is a term that is almost entirely absent from a wastelander's vocabulary, but when I walk down the road and see a mutated plant or even just a Brahmin, it's a reminder at how persistent life can be. Bombs by the dozen were dropped all over the place, and yet and still, life still managed to naturally develop and evolve even under the worst of circumstances. How incredible is that? And then we see how humans have recovered from small settlements like Megaton to larger ones like Diamond City and New Vegas. Humans didn't allow a tragedy like a nuclear fallout to knock them down for good. They rebuilt and strengthened their civilization. Obviously, it goes without saying that it's not like it once was, but shops are just as important as before. Restaurants, inns, and recreational facilities found their way back as well. When the currency of old was burnt to ash, the people decided that bottle caps would do just fine as a replacement. An agreement was made regarding that decision, and the people unified. How beautiful is that? Unification. Even under the worst of circumstances, the people recovered. If that's not beautiful, then what is? There are very few games that lean in heavier on music for world building than Fallout does. And although the ambient music is very powerful in itself and helps make the world feel alive too, it's the 1940s and 50s soundtrack that is truly what makes Fallout's world what it is. The songs that play tell a story about the world's history in an indirect way, but it says so much about what the world looked like before the fallout occurred. I'm aware that this particular observation relates greatly to point number one, but it's such an elevating aspect to the world's atmosphere that is simply not there without the music. One thing I think these old songs do for this game more than anything is give you a sense of hope. So many songs are upbeat, they're about love, life, happiness. It's a remnant from the past that gives the player something to smile about. When Civilization or Bongo 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 by the Andrews Sisters comes on the radio, I can't help but sing along or tap my foot. I can't imagine the morale boost some of these songs give someone actually living in the wasteland. Without this soundtrack playing in the background, my stroll in the wasteland would go from having some real pep in my step to looking over my shoulder every other second. It's a soundtrack of peace and comfort, and knowing that hundreds or thousands of others in the wasteland are hearing the same music on their radios is yet again just another example of unification in an otherwise chaotic and violent land. Music is something that can heal and motivate, and the soundtrack in these games does exactly that. As soon as an upbeat song comes on my Pip-Boy radio, things start to look less gray and start looking a lot more vibrant. It's like someone who was color impaired putting on glasses for colorblind for the first time and seeing how the world is supposed to look. All of these factors and more play a big part in transforming a desolate wasteland into something fantastical and sometimes even beautiful. Anyway, this was just something that came to mind that I personally find to not be something many people talk about when the wasteland comes up. Am I alone in this opinion, or do you feel the same way about these games too? Let me know in the comments below. Bye now.